Why do smart, successful people struggle so much with communication when the stakes feel personal? A single word choice, a delayed response, or a misread intention can derail a conversation before it ever really begins. In this episode, we're unpacking how subtle communication behaviors shape trust, perception, and decision making, especially when people don't have all the information. Although we're going to be talking to an online dating expert, the lessons here apply far beyond dating. Because at its core, this is about how humans interpret signals, manage uncertainty, and decide who feels safe to engage with. This is the Truth Be Told podcast, where we unlock the secrets of strategic communication. Today's guest is Erika Ettin, a dating coach, author, and founder of A Little Nudge, a company dedicated to helping people communicate more effectively in their personal lives, especially in online dating. Before becoming a nationally recognized dating expert, Erika spent years working in the corporate world, where she saw firsthand how small communication choices can dramatically change outcomes. She brings that same practical, evidence-based approach to modern dating, helping people cut through confusion, avoid miscommunication, and build more intentional connections. Her work has been featured in outlets like the New York Times, CNN, and the Wall Street Journal. She's got quite a popular Instagram page at A Little Nudge. Today, we're going to connect her expertise directly to the principles of effective communication. Welcome to this episode of the Truth Be Told podcast. I'm Dave Thompson. I am here with Erika Ettin. How are you this morning?
Great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited for this conversation. I'm excited for all conversations, of course, but with you especially, because it's
You
just
say
such
you're
a unique.
especially excited for me. It's
I
fine.
am. I am
I won't
especially
tell
excited.
anyone.
Yeah, I mean, everybody that's listening, all the other guests won't be offended by that. But I'm really excited because such a unique take on communication. Erika, I know, is founder of A Little Nudge. Recommend following her on Instagram. We'll talk a little bit more about that. But one thing I just want to kind of kick off the bat is we talk a lot about evidence-based interviewing in our world, like interview interrogation.
Okay.
And you, an expert on online dating and one-to-one coaching and consulting in that aspect. But what was kind of cool hearing your story that you can expand on is how you used science and data to
hmm
start kind of kick off what you're doing now. Maybe you can explain a little bit about that, and
Yeah,
then we'll get
sure.
into meat. Yeah.
So my background is not in how to help people with online dating. It's in economics. So I studied economics. I have a business degree, and I was working as an economist at Fannie Mae in Washington, D.C. And separate and apart from that, I was a really early adopter of online dating. I'm afraid to say what year because it was a really long time ago, 2001. Nobody did online dating in 2001, but I was like, I don't know, it seems like a cool new way to meet people. And so I did it on and off, over the years. And because of my background and just the way my mind works, I started a spreadsheet of my own online dating experience. Now, initially, that spreadsheet was so I didn't accidentally write to the same person twice, because
Sure.
back in the day, you didn't use Dave, Erica. You used Fun Guy Buffalo or like Bills Fan 123, whatever. So you don't want to write to Bills Fan 123 twice. So I started tracking that. And then I was like, well, I have this spreadsheet anyway. And so I can actually track the percentage of people who write back to me. So what's my response rate? And then from that, what percentage of people do I go out on a date with? So what's my conversion rate? And I made tweaks to improve those rates, lengths of the profile, length of messages, how many pictures, all kinds of things. It was never going to be a perfectly controlled experiment because nothing about people is predictable.
Right.
But to the best of my ability, I did a little experiment. And I really increased those numbers. That's when friends started asking me for help. Like, what are you doing that I'm not? Write my profile, give me advice. So I started helping them. I realized I really loved it. I was so sick of sitting in a cubicle. And so 15 years ago, next month, I quit my job and started A Little Nudge, where I help people with all aspects of dating, but primarily online dating.
I think it's awesome.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
I
What a
appreciate that.
cool story.
Sometimes it's
And
hard to Sometimes I'm like, "I did that? Wow."
well, I just looked. I think you're at like 245,000 followers on Instagram. I mean,
Oh,
you're
somebody
you're
checked this
killing it.
morning. Good job.
I wanted to make sure. I was like, that's really, really good. And
Thank
what's
you.
cool is, there's a lot of people out there that give advice on communication. But where you're coming from is this kind of a source of data, but then also the psychological perspective of how are people engaging with each other. I'm curious from I'm not going to restate the year that you said that you might
Oh,
have
it's
started,
okay.
but
I was obviously a small, small child. No, no.
clearly, yes, you shouldn't have been on the app. What do you think there's anything that has carried over as a constant from if you can remember back from when you first started in that space till
I
now?
mean, people are a constant. Like, even though I said they're unpredictable, yeah, people's behaviors can be unpredictable, but people and their needs and their desires are never going to change. People like companionship. People want someone in their lives. So, no matter the vehicle you find that person, the people behind it have similar needs always, similar communication needs. Like, I think I'll always have a job because even with AI, which, tells you exactly what you want to hear, I don't do that. People still need help with communication. And so, yes, the tools were different. Back then, there were no apps, where there were no smartphones. So you had your eHarmony, your Match.com, your sort of long form profiles where you would write a lot of words in a paragraph. And now, it's shorter. It's a couple prompts, it's, 140 characters. But when it comes down to it, people have the same goals. They're just seeking it a little bit differently.
Yeah, well, so that's the crossover here, right? Because we got a lot of listeners that are either in investigations and law
Mhm.
enforcement, human resources, kind of loss prevention, fraud, and sales professionals. And I thought this conversation with you is really relative to any communication we have in our professional or personal lives,
Sure.
right? Like the goal is to develop a relationship through trust and transparency, and hope to
Yeah.
get more information. Is
Yeah,
what
but do you think though in your world, I find that a lot of people who are asking me questions know exactly what they want to ask, but there's such a divide between what they want to ask and their ability to ask that. And I don't mean ability like they can form the words, but I mean their comfortability, is that word?
sure.
Their comfort in asking a question. And so I don't know if that's similar for you, where, I get a lot of questions from people. They're actively dating this person, and yet they're afraid to ask a basic question about where they stand with this person. And so there's such a divide there between what somebody wants to ask and what they're capable of asking.
I think that's a great point. Do you think it's because they're afraid of the answer, or
Yeah,
they're
of
afraid?
course.
Yeah.
Yeah. If I live in the status quo, not knowing what we are, then I get to keep what I have. If I ask and rock the boat and might not get the answer I want, then I lose it. And even though they know the status quo is not sustainable, nor is it comfortable, sometimes people would rather that than get a definitive answer, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. One of the crossovers I see there is a lot of times investigators will ask a "tell me what happened" kind of question,
Mhm.
and there'll be some areas within that answer that need to be probed further. But if
Mhm.
you don't ask that follow-up question, "Hey, what did you mean by that word?" or "What happened during this time frame?"
Right.
then it's easy for the investigation to go unfounded, right? If you don't ask that hard question
Well,
to clarify.
exactly.
Um, but yeah, I know investigators that have a difficulty asking a direct question.
And
And
they're
what
investigators. That's interesting.
Yeah. Well, and sometimes it can be, it's kind of the same fear of rejection, right? If you ask the question too early and a person says, "What are you
Then they
talking
haven't
about?"
built trust. Yeah. That's
Yeah, and
interesting.
a lot of crossovers there. I'm gonna go back to your initial spreadsheet. Do you remember what were some of did you have any like aha moments where you think, "Oh, that's the one biggest fix I should make." Like that's the easiest of the fixes.
Yeah, fewer pictures. I mean, some of the apps now require, like Hinge, for example, requires 6 pictures. When I did my analysis, um, the number I came up with was 4 pictures. 4 pictures is sort of the optimal number because people can see what you look like, but they can't see too much to reject you. People can see your face, they can see your body, they can generally see your lifestyle, but you put too many pictures up there, who's not gonna find one they don't like? So now most people have to do 6. But, fine, 4 to 6, no more than that though. The lengths of messages, people have shorter and shorter attention spans. Even back then though, something as simple as putting a paragraph space in there, which is what I tell people now too. Like just hit enter and make it a new text or put a paragraph space in there because people don't know you yet and they don't want to read your novel. And so things like that. It's not even write less. It's just space it differently.
Yeah.
Little baby things like that that might not seem like that aren't common sense to people that I, coming from the outside, can see it objectively and say, actually, you're doing fine, but with this small tweak on the margins, you could be doing better. Now,
Yeah.
whether they listen or not is another story, which it baffles me when people pay me for my time and then want to argue about why they're doing it the way they're doing. And it's like you literally can't do it. I'm telling you.
Yeah. Well, that's you said this earlier, but I know recommend following you on Instagram because you will tell it like it is. And it's kind of fun to see. You mentioned
I,
AI. Like AI makes you feel like you've always making a right
ugh,
decision.
AI is such a sycophant. It'll tell you whatever you want to know. I
Right.
don't do that. And yes, I think 95% of people, I think the 5% might be my mother who tells me I'm very mean, but I think I'm quite nice. But I am direct.
Yeah, direct but supportive. I want to go. You mentioned pictures, so this again to translate this. When I there's so much out there about people being frustrated about what kind of pic. Like men are not supposed to have pictures with fish, apparently, or gym pictures. Like you
Unless you're
hear
an
all these things.
actual like fisherman,
Unless
fine.
that's your thing, sure. But I'm thinking from a professional standpoint, people are immediately getting a first impression based off of either when they walk in the room, what you look like, your appearance,
Absolutely.
or maybe they're, if it's a sales professional and they're checking you out on LinkedIn first and they're looking at your
Mhm.
pictures. So, what are some of those things when you're talking about pictures from a dating perspective? What are those initial impressions that like could make or break a match based off of just
Do you
besides
look
whether someone's
angry or do you look happy? You know, if it's a woman who dates men and she's looking at a guy's first picture and it looks like a mugshot, that's an immediate no. If he's smiling, preferably with teeth, that's just closer to a yes. You know, yeah, you
as I
said it. No,
smile, I'm fine to
yeah,
your
no gym selfies in the man's mind, and I don't want you're a man, I don't wanna tell you how men think, although sadly, I understand more than I wish I did. Um, he's thinking, "Well, I hear women want someone fit, so I better show that." Yeah, maybe they do in clothing, and then let it be a beautiful, beautiful surprise if she gets to see your body, you know? So it's like just little things like that. I mean, all people ever want to see is who is showing up on the date. People want to see your face and what you look like a full body photo in clothing. Other than that, just something in your lifestyle, you doing something interesting. I always have people plant a picture of themselves doing something interesting that they actually do. So, for example, yours might be you at a microphone with your logo behind you. So I could say, "Oh, what are you doing? Do you have a podcast?" And that starts a really nice conversation.
Yeah, I think that's good. We talk a lot in our training courses about when you walk into the room, or a lot of people are doing interviews now on Teams or Zoom,
Mhm.
and it's like, what's that first impression? What does your background look like? Does it look like you're disorganized and cluttered and
Exactly.
those kind of things?
Exactly.
Are you seeing more? Because we're seeing this from an interview standpoint, is more use of technology where people are interviewing. Are there people are going on more first dates via FaceTime and Zoom
I
than you
tell them
think?
not to.
Yeah,
I mean, I understand why people want to make sure that the person is who they say they are, to make sure there's some semblance of conversation. But I often think it backfires because it's really hard, easier on video than on regular phone, but it's really hard to gauge chemistry, to get a sense of somebody without body language when it's not 3D. So I don't recommend a video call first. I would rather people just go out and meet. On video calls, the sole purpose is to exclude somebody, okay?
right,
You're not getting on there thinking anything other than, "I need to make sure they're not a weirdo," okay? So you're looking to exclude this person. I would rather you go on the date and look for reasons to include them. And, case in point, I had a woman maybe 2 weeks ago who had to do her FaceTime call to make sure he could hold a conversation. She ended up really liking him and he declined going out with her. And I hated that for her, but it can happen. I think most people are thinking of the FaceTime or the video as one way. Like, I need to know that this is okay with me. Well, they're checking you out too.
right.
So maybe just go on the date. The only caveat I have is if you can't meet for a significant period of time for some reason, then do a FaceTime. Or if you don't live near each other, start with a FaceTime to make sure one of you wants to travel.
Right. So we go from pictures and this visual appearance. So let's talk about the written word. And
Hmm.
so before we even get to people engaging with each other, there's the profile is your representation of who you are.
Yeah.
And that happens again in the business world in so many other different ways, whether it's a
Hmm.
LinkedIn profile, it's email communication or whatever. Um, what are some of the the most common errors, I guess, people make and how they represent themselves from a text standpoint versus.
Not writing a profile is the biggest error, or writing 2 words, or saying, "Ask me to get to know me." Like, how lazy can we be? The space to write the profile is already quite short, and so if you're still not writing anything of value, it just screams lazy. I always say lazy profile equals lazy dater. If someone is not committed to writing some words in their profile, they're not gonna be a good conversationalist on the apps, and they're not gonna be a good dater. Do people try to prove me wrong? Absolutely, and I hope they do. But I can't go on, like, feelings, I have to go on data.
Mhm.
So negativity is another issue in the profiles. "Don't write to me if this, I don't like this, if you're not gonna answer this," and it's like, how about just observe people's behaviors before prescribing to them what to do? Don't write in your profile who you're attracted to physically. Gross. Just choose people who you're physically attracted to, because even if somebody listed, "I'm looking for someone who is 5'1" with brown curly hair, who wears glasses and hoop earrings and a heart necklace," I'm describing myself, I'd be like, "Ew, I would never choose this person because now I'm some weird fetish."
Right, right.
You know?
Well, that's so because you mentioned height. I got to bring this up because it seems like the most common, and I'm making this up, I don't know, but it seems like the most common lie probably that men put on their profile is they have to hit the 6 foot benchmark. Like that's the threshold.
That's the most common lie for men, and age is the most common lie for women. And I
Okay.
understand the desire. Don't get me, I do not condone lying, but I understand the desire. It's no secret that women can be very superficial about men's height, and it's no secret that men can be very superficial about both women's age and body type. Okay. And is that generalizing? Yes. But is that true? Yes. And so all I can say is don't lie, the end, period.
Let's talk about lying because that's
Okay.
our world, right? Our training is all focused on how can people help other people get in a position to be comfortable to tell the truth.
Mm-hmm.
So clearly one of the
Mm,
issues with online with any dating is just like the trust economy is low right now. People are these
I
AI
know.
pictures, are these
Yep.
AI text messages, like is
I
this a
know.
real person? Any thoughts or examples where people have had to maybe be better investigators in an online dating space to
Well, I
make
don't
sure.
want people investigating. I don't want you going in thinking people are lying to you, because that's a sad existence. I want you going in, and might you get more disappointed if you go in that positive way? Yes. But you'll overall have a better experience. If you're going in, here's what I always say. At the beginning stages, it's better to be an observer than a detective or a sleuth. And I think you might say exactly the same. Observe what someone is presenting to you versus digging in and asking questions. Because when you start asking questions out of context, not only does it put the person on the defensive, but they can say whatever the heck they want. Whereas if you observe their behavior, I observe that you lied about your height by 6 inches. That would be reason not to see somebody again. But if you ask, like, are you lying about your, even if you're not, that would turn you off.
Yeah. I think so this is a good point about questions. One of the and tell me if this relates at all, but one of the obstacles we see are the most common mistakes, I guess, from investigators is that they either have a presumption of guilt when they walk into a room,
Mm-hmm.
and then that's often followed by a series of leading closed-ended questions to
Same
get in
thing. I
same
think we're
issue.
in the same industry. Yeah,
Yeah.
because I have people who come to me are not, I mean, by definition, they're coming to me, they're not happy with how things are going, right? And many of them unfortunately do have a negative attitude. So in addition to coaching, I often feel like I'm a cheerleader or a therapist, which I'm very clear that I'm not. But when you're coming in with that negativity, you've already presumed the outcome. That is exactly what you'll find. I mean, you know as well as I do, you can find data to prove yourself right every time, every single time. So if you're coming in thinking someone is lying or someone is guilty or someone is fill in the blank anything, you will ask the questions to prove yourself right every time. And I always say, like, if you're coming in assuming no one's good, it's too much of a task for them to prove you wrong, because they can't overcome that. But if you go in assuming that someone good is out there, it's much easier.
Yeah.
Even if you're disappointed sometimes, that's okay.
Get the information. That's like our kind of theme here from our training programs is to get away from walking into an interview, whether it's a sales professional trying to just close the deal, or it's an interviewer trying to get a confession. It's how do we get as much actionable information as possible so I can be more informed
Yeah.
about a decision.
Do you
And
do
I have
small talk? Do you start with small talk?
we start with evidence-based small talk. What I mean by
Okay.
that is like the superficial small talk is not truly developing rapport or creating trust.
Okay.
Right. So I'll give you a couple words here and you can tell me if these relate into your space. So what the research shows in our world here from investigative standpoint is to build rapport is you need things like empowering the other person to be able to be their true selves and they have choice. Transparency of kind of
Mhm.
what you're there for, your role and what the conversation is going to look like.
Right.
Honesty, being genuine and being who you are and following through with that. And then the last one I'll just leave with is adaptability. So being able to flex the conversation based off of the person that you're interacting with. So we're starting a
Mhm.
conversation using those principles of honesty, transparency, empowerment, and adaptability.
I see.
Do those present themselves in your world as well?
When you're getting to know someone on a date, yes. When you're just starting a conversation on an app, no. I'm much more targeted when I give advice on how to have conversations on the apps. Um, it's more just based on hobbies, honestly. It's very light. So more factual stuff. I consider it like a funnel. You start pretty broad, oh, I see you also play tennis. I'm making this up. Have you been playing since you were a kid? And then you're talking about tennis, and then you're talking about tennis, and then there's nowhere to go but go on the date because how much can you talk about tennis on an app,
Right.
right?
Right.
So very basic on the app. So none of that. However, when you're going out to meet somebody, that's where I think those concepts will apply. And that's where my the same exact thing, be an observer, not a detective. So I tell clients if the other person, for example, I never have them talk about past relationships, exes, all that on first dates. It's negative and it's honestly irrelevant. However, but if someone brings it up, I tell them to listen and don't change the subject because you're going to learn a lot of information. So even if you're curious about their past, don't ask, when was your last relationship? Not first date appropriate. But if they start bashing their ex, you sit there with your popcorn and listen because you're going to learn what you need to learn. And they're
Right.
probably doing that because you have made them feel comfortable. Yes.
Sure. And maybe learning how you're going to be talked about
Oh,
later.
100%. No, I always say if they're going to bash an ex, they're going to bash you. They're going to bash anybody. So
Yeah.
that's an automatic no
I
to
mean,
sit stand.
it's the same in a job interview, right? You're
Oh,
hiring
of
a
course.
candidate and they start talking about how bad their last boss was, and you just wonder, maybe that's true, or maybe there's a common denominator here in
Well,
the
if
process.
someone wants to hire me and they say, "Oh, I've worked with 6 matchmakers or dating coaches and they were all terrible," I'm not taking that client on.
Right.
I
Right.
will fail through no fault of my own.
That's right. We're one Reddit review away then from a problem.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So as you this funnel approach, I really like what one thing I've seen or observed from a negative standpoint, especially like I travel a lot, so you hear a lot of people on the plane or at an airport bar or hotel bar trying to interact, engage with each other, and meet somebody. A lot of people are very bad at keeping a conversation going.
They are. They don't ask any questions. They show no curiosity. It's so simple when you think about it. You could just say like, "And you?" That's not a creative question, but it is a question.
Right.
And so I have my clients in every message they send on a dating app ever make a statement and ask a question. I don't care if it's a basic question. The tennis. Okay, let's do one for real. What's a hobby of yours?
Well, watching football, we'll
Oh
go
yeah,
with.
which I can't talk about
You
because
don't
I
want
hurt.
to talk about sports.
No, it's fine. It's fine. I'll
We can
pretend. It's
okay.
fine. Um, how'd you feel about that Bills game this weekend?
Heartbreaking.
I know, right? How about that fill in the blank player? I don't know. At least they did a good job, right?
Yeah, and then this is good, and the role play on the negative side is, "Yep, they did, period."
Right.
The
Exactly.
conversation ends, yeah,
So
yeah,
I tell people to try 2 times. You've essentially ended the conversation. I'll give you one more chance. Maybe you don't realize. Yeah. Do you watch any other sports?
yep,
Great.
conversation over, right?
Yeah. I call that 2QS, two
Right,
questions and a statement. I
yeah.
tried once, you answered. I tried twice, you answered. Now I end with a statement. And the reason I even bother having people end with that statement, nice, great, fun, enjoy, is because I never want the non question answer to be like, she ghosted me.
She was the yeah, that's a good point. Well, so again, here's the relation. One of the easiest questions that we train people is, "Tell me more about that."
Yes, tell
And
me more is so beautiful.
so easy, and I know, and same thing from dating, difficult conversations, whatever it is, there's a lot of cognitive load on the interviewer, meaning the person leading the conversation, so we're
Yes.
thinking like, how do I look? Did I say that right? What's the next? What did they just say? Did I remember their occupation? And when you're
Mhm.
so focused on that, sometimes we don't know what question to ask next. And
Oh,
it's so
tell me more is
easy.
brilliant. I was just doing something for fun last night. No one will ever tell him, but I was out with a friend of mine and he's a talker. I mean, so am I, it's fine. But I was just curious to see how long he would talk before asking me a question because I'm really good at continuing to ask questions. And I did a few tell me mores. I think he talked for 2 hours straight. And the thing is, it didn't bother me. We're good friends. It's fine. But like, I did notice.
Yeah. Well, so how do you that's a good point too, is on the opposite side is sometimes we become so good of listeners that you are disengaged, right? There's only so much of the
Yeah,
bobbing of
well,
the
but you're
head.
also observing, and you're observing this person has no curiosity about me. So,
Yes,
yeah,
that's
you're
true.
listening, but you're also making observations while you're listening.
Yeah, if they're not following up or engaging you back in the conversation.
Right.
Yeah. So when we talked a little earlier, we mentioned AI. But whether it's AI or honestly, let's say somebody reaches out to you for some advice. You have a lot of good advice on
Thank
like
you.
how to answer prompts or
Mhm,
how to represent yourself.
mhm.
So let's say somebody is taking that and almost copy and pasting it
Okay.
and not being maybe not representing their genuine self. They're looking, how do I hit the algorithm versus how do I represent myself? Is
Yeah, and
there a
I tell
gap?
people never write a profile to try to attract a certain type of person because we don't know what that person you're trying to attract is attracted to. So just be yourself. But I understand not everyone is genuine. I mean, it'll come out, right? Eventually. You have to be yourself at some point, don't you?
Yeah. Yes. Well, and I wonder how much because there's so much good advice out there for people, and there's so many tools available for people to say, "Here's how I respond to this." Whether it's again a job interview or it's online dating, what's the right response? And then they all of a sudden they're a great communicator until a week later they're at the coffee shop having an in-person date
Correct.
and they don't know how to
Yeah,
talk.
but that's also why you should meet sooner rather than later. I mean, look, even if you do a FaceTime, I hate to say this, I never thought of it till just this second. Someone could have ChatGPT over here. That's crazy to me.
Right.
But yeah, meet in person. People have different skills. Some people are better writers. Some people are better in person. I would rather people just meet. I tell them a week is the maximum they should talk on an app before scheduling a date. Because after that, one, you lose momentum. But two, there's only so much more you can learn about somebody. I give them some rules. Um, as long as someone is engaged with you, asking questions, generally like writes in complete sentences, isn't like HMU, WYD, whatever. Um, someone doesn't get sexual, and they actually can lock down a date, then it's worth going on a date. And I know that sounds like a low bar. Very unfortunately, not everybody can cross that. I would say the most common reason people don't pass that threshold is they just stop answering or they don't ask questions. So, um, if they have satisfied all of those criteria, it is worth going on a date.
You just posted recently
I know.
a little pitch to men out there, probably anybody, but I know it was
Yeah, it was
more
a
than
popular video, huh?
yeah, yeah, but I thought it was good. What I'll let you give the takeaway there, but what you just said kind of reminds me of it. But the basic was be intentional about your
Well,
communication.
actually, the basic was be normal. And I don't
Well,
mean normal like I'm a weirdo. I'm extremely eccentric. I don't mean like water yourself down. I just mean like be normal in the chat. Yeah, all I said, this was a plea to men who date women specifically. Um, Don't comment on her looks because women assume if you're writing to her, you're attracted to her. That is baseline. There's never going to be a man who's going to write to you who's not attracted to you. So like don't tell her. She's got it. Right? Yeah, in sentences, ask her out. Be cognizant of the fact that women have to think about safety, for that reason, choose a location somewhat closer to her. Don't shove her your phone number and force her to give her, things that seem basic but are not. And it was interesting. A lot of the women in the comments who I told this video is not for you, of course they snooped. A lot of them were like, well, should we have to teach men that? And the reality of it is yes, because and I'm not trying to be condescending and I'm not saying men are not smart creatures, but none of this comes naturally to anybody. And so how could I begrudge someone who was say married for 20 years, has no clue what dating is like? It's not common sense. And if I've helped that person, then that video was worth it.
I think that's great. When you say it's not be normal, I mean people aren't really conditioned for this type of communication, but I'm wondering if you've had experience where you're noticing a different in age, meaning do people in different
No.
generations struggle differently?
To be honest, no.
We just have an across the board problem in
Yeah.
how we communicate. Yeah. Yeah. What
I
so
don't have a juicy answer for that one, but I see the same issues.
well, the reason I
And
asked
location too. Everyone loves to say their own city is the worst. There
oh,
is no better or worse. It's wherever you go, there you are. And
yeah,
so just people have issues communicating in any place. I would rather you feel good that someone weeds themselves out versus frustrated. Like if someone hasn't asked you questions, rather than being like, wah, wah, this is every person who exists. I hate online dating. I'd rather you say, well, I'm glad to know they don't show curiosity early so I can move on to somebody who does.
sure. What are some of the most you probably get asked the same question a lot, I would imagine, same questions or same examples a lot. So you just gave a few about like the lack of maybe clarity and intention being normal. Any other just common like, okay, here's another screenshot of the same problem. Like what are some of the top frequent
Yeah, a guy
flyers?
making a sexual joke that's not funny or appropriate. People yeah, here's a really basic one. I don't allow any of my clients anyway to ask, "How's it going? How are you? How's your weekend? How's your week been? How are you holding up this week?" Whatever version of that question, because it's lazy. If somebody has filled out a profile with actual information in there, it takes 2 seconds to glance at it and say, "Wow, you went to Alaska? I've been wanting to go. Is it worth it?" That took the same amount of time as how is your week shaping up? Because nobody knows how to answer that question. It's good, thanks. How about you? Everyone's boring. Everyone says the same stuff. I'm working, I'm tired, I'm sick, I'm doing laundry, relaxing. Nobody cares. I don't ask my friends every single day, how's your day going? We bore each other's minds, so that's something that people can really improve upon very quickly. And if you have no idea what to ask, just ask where a certain picture was taken. Anything on any topic is better than a nebulous no topic question.
Yeah, I like that, and for me, that takes these, really just generalizable, superficial conversation starters. Because
Yeah.
same in the business world, like, and I'm sure you've experienced this in your career too, is, if you're being pitched something, you can tell
hmm
when it's the same sales pitch they're giving every person that walks in that revolving door.
Right. And it's so noticeable. Now, I'm not saying if somebody asks you one of those boring questions, you should immediately dismiss them. I'm not saying that at all. In fact, I'm telling people if someone asks, how's your day going? Come up with one concrete thing you can actually tell them and see if they sort of run with it from there. So ask me, how's your day going?
How's your day going today?
You know, it's going pretty well. I looked out the window and saw my car covered in snow, and I remembered that I don't have a scraper. So, that's on my agenda to buy today. How about you?
And then the bad answer for me from what I learned from you is, "Yeah, it's bad here too."
Right.
Period.
Or you can say, oh man, you don't have a scraper. Does that mean you haven't lived in New York long? Where else have you lived?
Yeah,
That's smart.
sure. Yeah, we this is really great for especially for investigators listening. So many people are so focused on the end result of an investigative interview and not the first 5 or 10 minutes or whatever, or maybe it's even online in this concept, but how do you create just an open dialogue and you learn so much
hmm
more about people when they're actually engaging versus
Yeah,
just answering a
feelings
question.
questions work really well too. Like when I was out with my friend last night who didn't check to see how I was doing. It's fine. Um, he would tell me a story about work or something. But in addition to tell me more, I'd say like, "Oh, that sounds frustrating. Was it?" Or like, "That sounds kind of hard." I would have a hard time with that. Did you? People, oh my God, when you hit their feelings, it really means a lot to people.
Sure. Yeah, well, it shows that the active listening, like we talked about earlier,
Right.
can be we had another guest on, Mike Reddington, who gave an example that you can sit there, and everybody's done this, sit there and nodded your head and said, "Uh-huh, uh-huh, uh-huh," and you didn't listen to a damn word the other person said.
Exactly. Well, most people are planning the next thing they're going to say while you're talking.
That's right.
I tell people, trust your brain enough to know that if you truly listen to what somebody is saying, you will know what to say next. And in fact, whatever you say next will be better than what you were planning while the other person is talking because it's more relevant.
Yeah,
Like you and I here, if you were planning while I'm talking and I'm planning while you're talking, this would never be a natural conversation.
that's right. Not only planning, I've been on I know you've been on a bunch of podcasts too, which is I know you got a highlight reel on your Instagram profile, so people that wanna check out
I
some of
love being
the
on podcasts.
I think it's so much fun, but have you been on some bad ones? 'Cause you don't have to name
Of
them.
course I have.
Okay. I've been on a few where clearly the host has a script of questions
Oh,
and
yes.
it doesn't matter what you answer, that you're going where they wanna go.
Exactly. And that is so frustrating because it's not natural. It's not a conversation. And yes, I have been on those podcasts and I get why they do it, but it doesn't feel good as the guest.
Yeah. I have not that I'm gonna talk about any personal experience. So hypothetically, a friend of mine has experience in dating and almost felt like, you got a lot of people who've been doing this for a long time. So I'm sure there's exhaustion and just fatigue from the whole thing. And so the initial either online or in person almost feels like a checklist of let me
Yeah,
ask these 10 questions and make sure you're qualified.
yeah, I hate that. It shouldn't feel like an interview. I feel like people are coming in with their clipboards and their check boxes. That's not fun for anybody because even if they satisfy all of those check boxes, they feel like, well, I could be anyone, plug and play. You know, it's just a new person. It's just a conversation. And it's interesting. I feel like people go either that route where they're like trying to disqualify people, or they go the other route, which is, ugh, whatever, I don't care at all. Like I was out with a friend yesterday afternoon, and she was going on a first date, just a coffee date after our plans. And I asked her where. I was curious. She told me the coffee shop. And she goes, yeah, I have a first meetup. I said, I thought you were going on a date. She goes, well, I don't count it as a date. And I said, okay, but it is a date, right? She goes, well, I don't know if I want to date this person. I said, I know. I mean, the first date is to see if you want to go on another date. And she goes, well, I'm just wearing this. And it was fine. It was jeans and a sweater. It's not a big deal. But she was putting so little into it that I feel like you have to be somewhere in the middle. We still have to present our best selves. And I don't begrudge, I get where she's coming from and I get where the other person is coming from. But we have to find some middle ground there where you're still trying, you're still presenting your best self, but you're not trying to figure out the outcome on date 1, but you're also still trying a little.
Yeah.
And
You
then I apologized to her cuz I said, "You know what? You didn't ask for my advice. I'm sorry." And I
do you
apologize.
do you struggle with that separation or your friends
Well,
just used to that?
especially because she and I met, this is so silly. She and I met at this dinner with strangers because she recognized me from Instagram.
Oh, that's
And
great.
so it makes the dynamic of our friendship a little odd because she knew me first as my business.
Sure.
But now that we're friends, I try really hard not to give unsolicited advice if she doesn't ask for it. And so I did apologize and she's like, it's totally fine. You are the expert on this. I said, I am, but you didn't ask. So
Yeah. When you just brought up, date versus meetup, I know that's another thing you kinda help is people clarify, define things, and so, like, in the investigative world, somebody says, "Those 2 employees got into a fight." Well, we might assume what a fight
a
was without
physical
asking
fight,
for
a
the
verbal fight, right.
right. So what kind of I know this is a repeat issue that you've seen, but how do
Right.
you help people clarify to commit? Like, what
Well, I use the word date. I think the word date is really important. Just because you're going on a date doesn't mean you're going on another date. It doesn't mean you're going to kiss. It doesn't mean there's going to be any romance. But going on a date does set the intention that we are seeing if there is romantic possibility here. And I like the word date. If the word date scares someone to the point where they don't want to go or they don't want to use it, I do have to wonder, are you ready to date?
yeah.
Because
Well,
if
and
that is so scary for a 1 hour coffee, why?
what are you doing? Right. Yeah. Well, and the lesson learned here, I think, for investigators, like everybody interprets these words differently, whether it's fight, date, aggressive, everybody has their own perspective. So making sure we're asking the right questions to clarify, because when we make an assumption, it's probably wrong, or could be right, but
Absolutely.
we could be
And
wrong.
if you're not sure, like I get a lot of questions like this person asked for my number or asked me to go out for coffee. Is it a date? I'm not a mind reader. So I always say, why don't you just say, oh, I can't ask.
Right.
Well, then you're going and you still don't know. I think it's a beautiful thing to say, do you mean on a date? Because that way, I posted this an example of this maybe 6 months ago. It was a woman, a guy asked for her number at a happy hour for some sport they play, hockey, football, whatever, doesn't matter, softball, whatever, it doesn't matter. And they set up their date in her eyes, and she wrote, "I'm looking forward to our date," based on my suggestion to say that.
Yeah.
And he goes, "Oh, I didn't know it was a date. I thought it was a meetup, a get to know together, a get to know you." And she said, "Oh, well, I really wanted it to be a date because I think you're handsome and interesting. If it's not, I'm going to have to decline." And he was never to be heard from again.
And well, I think it's important not only to clarify that, but then you talk a lot about commitment and follow up prior. So let's say it's a date a week from now, like the multiple
Oh
checkpoints
my
to make
God,
or one. But
the
from a leadership
complications.
standpoint, I think it's the same thing. It's like you give people direction. If they don't ever have follow up or accountability, like it just builds this lack of trust and transparency. So how
Oh
does that?
yeah, and no one else knows your rules. No one has your playbook. So for every person, let's say you have a date a week out. For every person who has a date 1 week from today, one person wants to hear from that person every day. One person says, "We have a date scheduled. I don't want to talk to them again until the date." And then there's in the middle. And so unless you express to somebody what you want, and you don't have to say, "Here's what I want." You can say something as simple as, "Let's check in again Friday to reconfirm our plans for Monday." That's saying it so kindly, but expressing what you want without saying, "Here's what you need to do."
Yeah,
And
a
I
little
think
more.
people need to learn that.
Yeah, a little more measurable, actionable. I mean, it's the same thing. If you're given a task of some sort and nobody ever follows up with you, naturally, you're just gonna have a lot and then you're unknown, like, "Is this exactly what I'm supposed to do? What are their expectations? What are their
Well,
boundaries?"
exactly. And if you don't know, clarify. I think it's a beautiful thing when someone can say, "All right, our date is set up for next week. How much would you like to chat this week before we meet?" Everyone's
Right.
a little bit different. There's something so beautiful in asking for clarification.
Yeah. Well, speaking of clarification, I'm only gonna keep you for a couple more minutes.
Okay.
Great information. What I am curious because I know, again, you're direct, which is good. People need to hear the truth or at least hear sometimes people reach out and they just want affirmation they're doing things right, and that's
Yeah, I'm not
the
the
best.
right coach for that.
Well, what are some of the or maybe there's one in particular, but maybe the most I don't know if controversial is the right word, but the one you get the most, like, feedback, you get the most commentary or pushback or
Oh,
divisiveness on?
I mean, I think most people who are following me are pretty on board with my advice. Um, I sometimes get pushback, but I think most people have come around. I tell people not to take things off the app before the date. So if you are talking to someone in one of the dating apps, schedule the entire date within the app, no switching to text, because texting is where dates fall apart. Because there's just no more urgency and you can't even reference the person's profile anymore. I do get some pushback on that, like, "No, I have to text them more." It's like, "Do you though?" Um, but I think I've explained myself well enough that people have come around. Uh, I don't know. I feel like you have an example that you're thinking of.
This is not about me
Ah,
today on this
it
podcast.
can be for the next 2 seconds. Did
Yeah.
you have an example of my advice that you've seen pushback?
No, no, I think what I really like about your clips, like I said a few times, is that it's not just gonna affirm, "Okay, great message, good, that was really supportive." Maybe it was, but you're
Yeah. Oh,
saying
you know what? Okay, you know what got pushback, and this really annoyed me actually. I'm out here giving free advice. Okay, so I had this video that I thought, sometimes, okay, whenever I post anything, I have to make sure I'm available for the whole next hour because usually I'm 99% certain what the comments are going to say, but on very rare occasions, I miss something where people in the comments are not shy about. So I have to make sure I'm good for like a good hour to monitor them to make sure nothing goes off the rails. So one day I was pretty busy, so I posted something that I thought was so innocuous. It was a video of me on a podcast saying, "Here is exactly how you use Hinge to be successful." And I said, "You are allowed 8 likes and 8 messages a day. Send all 8 messages every day, and then do this, and then it was like exactly what you need to do." I thought that was so simple. Okay. Somehow within the first day, there were like 300,000 views on it. And I'm like, what have I done? I thought I gave good advice. And it's everyone in the comments being like, "I can't find 8 people a day. That's crazy. You're wrong." And it was just so much complaining in there. And I was really surprised Because here I am just trying to like lift everyone up and give people good, actionable, measurable advice. And instead of saying, let me try to take that advice, all I got was pushback of there aren't enough good people on the apps. And that's back to, your mentality is what you'll find. And I thought that was fascinating. I can generally predict how many views a reel will have based on the content. When I put myself in front of screenshots, it always gets more because it's juicier. When it's just a video of me talking, it always gets less. And this got so many more because of the complaints in the comments. It was
Yeah.
fascinating.
Yeah. Hey, any engagement's good engagement, I
Yeah, no,
suppose.
sure. I thought that was such a simple one that I didn't have to monitor.
Yeah. Well, so all of this information you're sharing from that perspective, again, draws me back to like you talked about conversion rates early on.
Hmm.
And I'm thinking even like salespeople that are at a trade show trying to convert a trade show meeting into a demo and then turning a demo into a sales, like closing a sales deal. And you looking at those data points. And so from a conversation standpoint, it's like, where am I missing, right? Is it in
Hmm.
the initial match? Is it in the conversation? Is it in the date, or is it in the longer term relationship piece? And have those data points is
Yeah.
helpful.
And when I work with someone one-on-one, we can try to identify that.
Yeah.
But it's interesting, people when they're behind a screen, they'll say
Yeah.
anything.
A
And it's
lot.
interesting too between platforms. People are much nicer to me, I think because they've seen everything I've built on Instagram than on Threads, which I think that is the dregs of the internet, or on, I have a Facebook business page too. People don't really know me as well there or on Threads, and I find that there's like a lot more like nasty comments on Threads and Facebook, and generally what I get is nice on Instagram. It's
Yeah.
interesting.
What last question? And is there anything else you just learned in general about like this work has brought to you about just human behavior in general and how people communicate
I don't
with each
want
other?
to be negative.
That's okay. There were
Um,
disclaimer, I set you up for a potential negative answer, so this was on me.
yeah, I hate to say this, but I thought self-awareness was a quality that most people had until I started doing this work. And I'm not trying to be self-promoting, but I am pretty self-aware. Um, and when I say self-awareness, I mean like, do you understand how what you're putting out there is perceived by other people? And I find that that is really lacking in people. And why is that? I don't know. But what people are putting out there and how they think it's going to be perceived versus how it actually is, or how I, as an unbiased third party, is seeing it, is so different. And that's fascinating to me. I guess I hadn't worked with people that closely before, like when I was in finance, to see that. Also, just a silly one. I've never met anyone who thinks they look older than their age. Everyone who comes to me is like, I know I look good for my age. I just smile and nod because, like, what's wrong with looking your age? And so they're like, well, everyone tells me. And I'm thinking, well, of course your friends tell you they love
Right.
you.
Right. Right. I think that first part just is that's a direct hit to everybody that's listening is how to be self-aware, whether it's in a business
I don't know
setting, a
if it's a
personal
learned
setting.
skill or not, but
Yeah.
I think we can take into account the feedback we're getting. And instead of being obstinate and saying, no, this is what I meant, instead listen to the actual feedback you're getting. Because again, if I put something out there, I can predict 99%. But if I'm wrong, that 1%, it's so important for me to take that feedback versus saying, no, this is what I meant, because that's not how it's perceived.
Yeah. I think I mean, there's a lot of good takeaways here. So I appreciate you sharing all those. The one piece is that, like, and it ties us back, follow you, right, on Instagram
I
at a
mean,
little
sure.
nudge. But it's feedback, and whether it's leadership position, it's dating, it's
Yeah,
difficult conversations, is being open to, hey, how can I be better? How can I learn from this?
absolutely. But you have to be, like you just said, you have to be open to that. And it
Yeah.
takes a little humility.
Humility and vulnerability, two things we're
Correct.
missing a little bit in this space. So as we wrap up, I know I mentioned your Instagram. Anything else that you want people to note on how they can find you, connect with you, or
No, just
follow up?
anything online at A Little Nudge, my website, alittle.nudge.com. I'm really easy to find. Just like look up Erika Dating Coach and you will find me.
Yeah. Well, thanks for the time with me and for all you're doing for the world out there trying to bring people together
You're
because
welcome. Thanks for having me.
good stuff. And thank you all for listening to this episode of Truth Be Told.
To help more listeners find our show, please provide us a rating, give us a follow, and share this episode with your colleagues. For the latest news and to engage with our guests, follow Truth Be Told on your favorite social media apps. And don't forget, we are available on all major platforms, including Apple, Spotify, and watch a video of this episode on YouTube. On behalf of our guests and valued sponsors, thanks again for listening to this episode of Truth Be Told.